You're listening to the Family Podcast from PursueGOD.org.
Well, couples, I'm excited to explore a simple but yet profound skill and insight that you need to learn about your spouse and how you guys interact in your marriage. And this comes from John Gottman. 7 Principles for a Healthy Marriage is a great book if you want to read. We've covered a lot of principles from Gottman. He's done a ton of research. He watches couples. He's learned what are the predictors of divorce and the couples that can do well in marriage. And so this today, I think, is a really interesting point and something for us to think about our marriages, because what Gottman would say is really the greater predictor of divorce is not those big things that can happen in marriage that definitely can rock us, like things like having an affair or, finding out some other major betrayal or some money issue in your marriage that can cause divorce. What Gottman would say is it's really the everyday interactions that we have that over time, if we don't respond to them well, will lead to bitterness and resentment and ultimately for a lot of couples, maybe in divorce. So I want to explore that today because I think it'll be good for you guys as couples. It's good for me and my marriage as well to think about what are the ways that I respond to my husband? How does he respond to me? What becomes sources of conflict or just consternation in our relationship? And might it just be some simple adjustments that could really help to make a positive impact on the relationship? So the concept that we're talking about is what Gottman would call a bid. And a bid is any attempt from one partner to get attention, affection, or affirmation or support from the other spouse. So those bids can be like super clear, like, I need you to help me put the kids to bed. Or it could be a little bit more subtle, like, I'm tired tonight. So some other examples might be, one spouse might be like, how do I look? And the subtext or the point of the bid of that statement that your spouse is making, it really is, I need your attention. I need to know that you find me attractive. Another bid might be in the form of like, getting the kids to bed is really hard. So the translation is, I could really use your support or your help, right? So that's a bid, just any attempt by one spouse, just kind of needing something from you, the other spouse, needing attention, needing affirmation or connection. So you can see already that, okay, because we're making bids all the time with our spouse, right? It might be, just you're feeling disconnected and you need a date night. It could be a lack of intimacy. And one spouse is saying like, I just feel like I miss you. We just don't spend any one-on-one time together. You can see that if you're putting that out there over time, your spouse doesn't really respond to it or make any adjustments, that is going to breed bitterness and resentment. And over 20, 30 years, that might lead one of you to say, I'm done. I don't think you care about me or love me. Because in all our resources at Pursue God, ultimately, the ultimate thing is that what the Bible talks about, the quality of love that Jesus had for the church was sacrificial and selfless. He gave up his life for his bride, his church. And that's the comparison that Paul uses in Ephesians of how a husband and wife should love one another. And so you can see how this concept that Gottman has about responding to your spouse's bids is basically being selfless and sacrificial and listening to the needs of your spouse and responding to them. So we're going to take this idea and we're going to explore it a little bit because there's really 3 main ways he says you respond to a bid from your spouse. You either turn towards, which is the good one. It's turning away or turning against. So we're going to explore that here in just a minute and explain those a little bit more fully. But I want you to have your thinking cap on about how you feel like you're doing at seeing your spouse, hearing their needs and responding to them or not. And maybe then realizing maybe that's why we're just always at odds with one another, or we just don't really trust one another. It's because we're not in these everyday, more simple moments, we're not listening or meeting each other's needs. Okay, so like I said, the first response to a bid is to turn toward. And this is the one we all want to be doing all the time. Now, we're not going to bat 1,000 here, but this is where we want to get. That you turn towards, that you engage with that attempt from your spouse, that you hear them. You say, you know what, I want to hear more about that. Or tell me what you need from me. I can tell there's something going on here. So one example would be, if your spouse is like, hey, check out this funny video I saw today, that a turning toward, just a simple thing would be to watch it, to laugh at it. And they'd be like, you have anything else that made you laugh today? Something that's just like a point of connection. You could see how, like, if your spouse said you want to look at a funny video and you sit down, you're like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. The subtext you're giving back is not only are you not connecting with your spouse, but you're also now just even putting him down. So it could be, that earlier example of putting the kids to bed is really hard, that the spouse turning towards that would be, you know what? You're right. It is hard. Let me help you tonight. Let me get the kids to bed, do bath time. You go read your book, go on a walk, go get coffee with a friend. That's an example of turning towards. For a lot of husbands out there, it might be you saying like, listen, I just feel like we never get any one-on-one time. I miss you. I miss having intimacy with you. A turning toward would be the wife saying, you know what, you're right. We're getting the kids bed early tonight so we can have some quality time together. Those are examples of when your spouse says something, a need for connection, for affirmation, that you respond to it, that you hear it, you turn towards your spouse, that selfless sacrificial love. Okay, so Proverbs 15:1 says, a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. So you can see how having a gentle response, because sometimes, the bid might be like, you're never home, or I just feel like you're always off doing other things. Like you could have a defensive response to that. But what Gottman would say, biblically speaking, what the concept would be is that you would turn towards your spouse, that rather than being defensive, you'd say, you know what, tell me more. I'm sorry that I have not met that need for you, or that I've been selfish, or I've been distracted with work, or whatever it is. That a gentle answer, a gentle response is going to breed trust and connection. That's the piece of the turning towards a bid that your spouse has, is that's what it does. It builds trust. It breeds connection and intimacy. So you can see how if both of you are responding to each other's bids, that your relationship's going to be rocking and rolling. Things are going to be easy because your spouse is seeing that you hear them, that you see them, that you love them, that you want to serve them. Again, the Bible speaks to that very clearly. Okay, the second response then is you can do the turning away. And this is kind of what they would say is a neutral to negative response. It's basically you ignore it because you're distracted, or you kind of half-heartedly are like, sure, yeah, maybe I could do that. So your spouse puts something out there like, I just would really love to spend more time with you, or I'm just exhausted every day dealing with the kids. That a turning away would be you don't even hear it, or you don't really acknowledge it, or you're just kind of like, yeah, okay, maybe we could talk about that later. So again, as Gottman would say, it's really the more day-to-day small interactions that lead to couples that do well or don't do well. You can see how the turning away, where the one spouse is just kind of off in their own little land, or it's just the TV show they're watching, or the sports game they're watching, or whatever they're doing on their phone is more important than what you're saying. So you can see how that could start to breed dissent in your heart and not feel like your spouse is for you, right? Because they're selfish. They're in their own little world, not thinking about anything else but themselves. So that's kind of a turning away. It's really not listening. So for a lot of couples, if it's like the husband saying, and it's not always the husband, the wife could say this too, but I'm using the husband as the example. Well, I just feel like we haven't been intimate in weeks. That a turning away would be the spouse just kind of being like, I know, we'll try maybe next week or this weekend we'll try. So it's kind of like you're not fully turning away from it, but you're not turning towards either. You're not really saying to your spouse, honey, I know that's important to me too. I know that's important to you. We're going to figure it out and come up with a plan. So turning away is just kind of yeah, maybe we could look at that or talk about it, or you don't even hear it at all. Now, Philippians 2:4 would say, don't look out only for your own interest, but take an interest in others too. Again, the Bible speaks very clearly to how the quality of love that we should have for our spouse and for anyone in our life is that we look out for the needs of our others and are not just thinking about ourselves. So this turning away is not helpful in your marriage. It's not going to breed connection and trust. Your spouse is going to feel like you don't listen to me. Whatever else you're doing is more important than our relationship. Now, the last one's even worse. The turning against is beyond just turning away and not responding positively, is you put actually the bid down. You put your spouse's feelings down. You're sarcastic, you're critical, you're just irritated by it altogether. So that example of like putting the kids to bed or I'm just exhausted every day, that instead of turning towards your spouse saying, how can I help you? You're like, well, if you were more organized or less lazy, maybe parenting wouldn't be so hard for you, right? So it's not only you're not responding to the bid, you're turning against it. You're not saying, oh my gosh, how can I help? But now you're also just being critical of your spouse and their personality or their ability to be a good parent or whatever it is. So you can see how this one really gets dangerous for a relationship. This breeds contempt and emotional distance immediately. And it might be, again, some of these examples that we give, guys, is like the small stuff. It's not just about, having an affair. It's not about, taking money and spending it and not telling your spouse. Like, it can just be the everyday things, the simple things of helping with chores around the house, or one spouse might be like, I just really need us to track our spending better because we're really trying to stay on a budget. And the other spouse is like, yeah, sure. And just continues to do their own thing and doesn't respond to that. It can be the everyday little things that over time can add up, that if you're turning against or turning away, your spouse is going to say, you know what? I don't trust you. I don't think you serve me or love me or care about my thoughts or feelings. And you shut down. And in fact, we've seen that in just recent months. It's so heartbreaking in our ministry, just seeing couples that come to this place where I don't know that it's even a major thing. It's just that one spouse comes home and says, I'm done. I don't want to be married to you anymore. And it's likely, and a lot of times it's not some major offense, but it's a million little offenses over time, over the course of your marriage, where you just feel like your spouse doesn't listen to you, doesn't care about you. So again, couples, I really want to challenge you to look at your own marriage. Listen to this podcast with your spouse and evaluate, how are we doing? Do we feel like when we put something out there, like a bid, simple, just everyday connection points, do we hear each other? Are there ways that I could be better in responding to you and vice versa? Have a conversation about that. Because I promise you, if you can get more to the turning toward, responding to your spouse and something that they're asking for, whether it's a subtle thing or whether it's super clear, the more you can engage with that and turn towards it and figure out, like, how can I be better in serving and loving you? Think about how that will help your marriage long-term, because you trust each other, because you're on the same page, because you're connected. So when the things in the world come along, or let's say a job loss comes along, or a health crisis, or something happens in the family, that you can feel like, okay, you and your spouse, like, we're on the same page, we're one. So all this stuff is stressful, but we know that we love each other. We're for each other. We care about each other, versus the couples that don't feel that connection and trust with their spouse. And then these outside things come in. They're looking around saying, who can I trust? Who has my back? So talk about this as a couple. And I just pray that you'll work hard at just the everyday things and recognize that those matter. It matters what your spouse says after dinner. It matters what that offhand comment might be of just, I feel tired today. It matters to turn toward one another and to listen for what your spouse needs and find ways to meet the need, or to say, you know what, I don't know if I can do that, but I could do this. Turn towards one another, listen to each other, show love, care, build trust and connection. And I promise you, it's going to help your marriage to be strong. And ultimately, at the end of the day, this is what honors the Lord. This is what God wants. You're one with your spouse. So if you don't look out for their needs and you're only looking out for your own, that is not the kind of love. That's not the quality of love that Jesus has for us. And it's not the quality of love he wants us to have in our marriages. So let's challenge ourselves to push against our selfish natures and turn towards our spouse and meet their needs as they meet ours.
Thanks for listening. If you would like to give to help support our ministry, please visit PursueGOD.org/donate. Find more resources to talk about these topics with your small group, family, or mentor on PursueGOD.org.